According to Albert Einstein, we cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. My name is Corinna Stoffel, and I'm the host of Toward a New World. The world seems to be falling apart. Are you as frustrated as I am with the talk about how to fix things or what needs to change, yet nothing changes? In the episodes, I invite people to look from different perspectives, sometimes even contrary to the current points of view. My intention is to evoke a different level of consciousness by empowering listeners to explore what is true for them and begin to live their lives from that place, thus changing their lives and through it, the world. If this appeals to you, I ask you to subscribe to the podcast on this channel. Hello, Tanja. It is so great to have you. And I am so looking forward to, would you tell a little bit about the Random Acts of Inconvenience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was somebody who, as a kid and a young adult or a young person, was never really concerned about this idea of convenience. And I grew up in all these countries where, island time, Africa, on islands like Madagascar and Mauritius, all these different places where life was kind of laid back. Yeah, I had to go to school. Yeah, but I spent a lot of idyllic time, like outside, wandering around, not worried about time. And so when I was older, I was also one of those people that if there was, like, I have a famous story of a lost squirrel in downtown Denver, where this squirrel is running around. We're driving, my friend and I are trying to catch a plane, and I see this squirrel, and it's like downtown, it's clearly lost. So I yell, stop. Now, my friends know if I yell stop and we're driving, I'm already getting out of the car. It doesn't matter if it's 60 miles an hour, they better stop because I'm already opening the door. So he knows that, he stops, I run out, I'm looking around, I see, I know the park is like over there somewhere. So he's yelling, we're going to be late. I'm like, and he knows it doesn't matter. We missed the plane for me to save the squirrel. And so I'm herding the squirrel, stopping traffic, people yelling at me, whatever, but I'm herding the squirrel towards the park. And at about 2 blocks away, and I keep pointing, the squirrel sees the green, right? And now he's really going. So we're running to the park together, back when I could run. And of course, my friend's following us in the car behind us, stopping traffic when he can. And so the squirrel takes off into the park. I jump in the car. My friend's like, we're gonna miss the plane. And I'm like, yeah, you know how it is. And of course we made it that time, but I've missed plenty of planes or trains, or a few years ago, missed 4 clients' appointments because we were saving a mom and her baby ducks. That she'd had her baby ducks in a bad place, and we had to go corral them all and take them somewhere else. But I've known for that until I got caught up in our hyper-convenienced world, right? So it kind of, it's like the frog in the boiling pot, right? Like it happens over time. Yeah. You start like, and so I traded doing good in the world, basically, helping little ladies that were lost, whatever. I stopped doing good in the world traded it in for random acts of kindness. I'm in the Starbucks line. Oh, there's somebody behind me. Oh, I'm a cool person. I'm going to buy them a coffee. And the barista's like, oh, that's so nice. And I'm like feeling really good about myself. Woo, look at me, random acts of kindness. Grocery store, buy some people behind me groceries, whatever. But it was always convenient. I was already doing something. Yeah. Right? Versus my used to be life was always about inconvenience, because, seeing a lost dog or some problem is always inconvenient. It's always at a time right? There's no such
rarely convenient.
rarely is it a time when you don't have a bunch of stuff going on and now you have
Yeah.
to get a priority. Yeah. So I didn't really notice that I'd become a virtue signaling random acts of kindness person, but I was. One night, driving down the road, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Now, I was always that person when something looked off or felt off or whatever, I would go investigate because that's usually when I'd find a problem that I could help be part of a solution to. This night, I see something, I couldn't really identify it, but I knew it felt off. And then I started trying to talk myself out of it. So I was going, oh, yeah, it's kind of dark. You probably didn't really see anything. Oh, you know what? If you went back, it'd be nothing. And you're trying to get to this event and there's traffic everywhere. Come on, Tanja. You know what? And this is when it really hit home. I said, I bet somebody else is already on it. And when I said that to myself, I really literally felt like somebody just slapped me.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, yeah. When did I become that person? So yes, it was a hassle. Yes, it took me quite a while. And I got around, got turned around, got out of the traffic, came back around, and I had been driving by this slope. So what I'd seen was at the edge of this slope, right? So I got around there, got it, it was almost dark now, and I shone my headlights to where that thing I'd seen. Well, what I had seen was the edge of an overturned wheelchair. And there was a man laying on the ground beside it. It was 45 degrees out and dropping and dark, right? And of course, I was horrified. I ran up, I grabbed him, went up to see what was going on. He wrote, cold chair. I got his chair down, got him up, and I started to take him home. He wrote down, he couldn't speak very well, but I wrote him. He was shit, whole body was shaking. Found out later, as he's trying to tell me what a hero I am, and I just want to throw up because, like, are you kidding? I almost let a man die. I literally almost let that man die. Found out that he'd been laying there for like 4 hours. He was right by a bus stop, hundreds of cars going by, 4 hours. And he was trying to pay me, tell me that I was a hero. And I felt sick. That's all I can say is felt sick. I almost let a man die because I didn't want to be inconvenienced. And he would have died because we hit 30 that night.
Yeah. And how much are we, all of us, doing what you did initially, talk ourselves out of it? Oh, somebody else is going to take care of it.
Right. I didn't really see anything. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, contemplate that. You drive by, something looks off. You're like, or worse, you don't even notice anymore.
And I hear you from another perspective is I am somebody, if I have people in the car, I'm the one who sees the animal, the others don't.
There you go. Right.
And the animal I see because of the movement. You saw that thing, whatever it was, even being still.
Yeah. It just seemed out of place.
Yeah.
And then probably the feeling, the instinct, you know what I mean? Like energetically, something was wrong. It's like when people say to me, well, Tanja, we'll drive along and all of a sudden say, we gotta stop and check out that dog. And they'll say, it's just a dog on over there. And I'm like, no, there's something wrong about it. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel, there's something up. And my friends are always like, how do you even know that? A crow my daughter and I were going to a movie and we got out and there was a bunch of crows and there was one standing in the parking lot. Well, that's not unusual for a crow to be standing in a parking lot, right? And to get fries or find food. And I looked at my daughter and I'm like, and I pointed and she goes, okay, fine, let's go. And sure enough, this is a crow that something had happened and his crow friends were yelling. And I went over and I gathered him up and his eyes were twitching. He clearly had a head injury of some kind. And as soon as I bundled him up, his crow buddies did one last crow and they all left, which told me he was terminal because they didn't attack me. And so I took him home, and there was nothing to do but give him a safe place
to die.
Yeah. And but instincts, we have those, but when we're hyper like convenient, like we're trying to get things and we're not present. Right?
And I think that is the key word, what you just said, is we are not present.
Right.
How easy is it to be present?
Well, in today's hyper-convenience world, probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be so easy.
Right. When most people's nervous system is dysregulated, I do a lot of work with people on that. So most people's nervous systems are dysregulated. And when you have a dysregulated nervous system, it's almost impossible to be present because you're running anxiety, fear, fight or flight, freeze, whatever. Those are the modes that you're operating in. And presence is very difficult in that mode. And so I think that's, or overbooked. If you're running late to everything you're doing and you constantly feel like from the moment you get up to the moment you go, you're just like doing chasing, you're not going to want to notice something that you might have to do something about.
Absolutely. And just to talk about, I had a conversation with a friend this morning earlier, and we were talking about fear. And I shared with her, oh yeah, I dealt with that fear. And then I realized how many micro fears are hidden underneath that fear that I dealt with, that was no longer there. But those micro fears totally disappeared because it took me time to get to them.
Yeah.
To be present with myself and say, something is off, as you said.
Yeah.
Energetically.
Off outside of us or off inside of us. I mean, it's all kind of the same thing if we're not present. So what I decided then was this whole like practicing random acts of inconvenience. So if we've become hyper convenienced, how do we grow our tolerance to be inconvenienced again? And I think that's what a lot of us need to do. We need to get back the ability to feel inconvenienced and not feel like we're going to die or somebody else is going to die or a meteor is going to hit us or something like, but I mean, that's like
falling.
Right. I mean, right. Exactly. So, I mean, I say that because as somebody with autism, when there's a big conflict, the first thing that comes up for me is we're all going to die. I mean, it's the first thing that my nervous system says is we're all going to die. Behind that, I say, yeah, that's not true. But the way that I'm created, that would be catastrophizing, right? So we can all learn how to not to do that too. I realize that no, that is not actually accurate. There is not a meteor. It feels like that going to hit the window right now because there's a problem. But even leaning back into something as simple as this, if you're in a hurry all the time, what does it take to look around your house and see how many things you don't do because you don't feel like you have time to do them? I was contemplating this the other night when my housemates were all gone and they weren't going to be home for 2 days. Am I still going to pick the crumb off the floor? Am I still going to wipe down the counter as I go? Right? Or am I, because my vacuum cleaner fell over and there was 1 second I just looked at it on the ground. It had fallen. You know how sometimes the vacuum doesn't catch and so the stupid handle is always falling. And it happened like 4 times. And the 4th time I just looked at it and I thought, I think I'm just going to leave it like that. Because it was inconvenient. I picked it up 4 freaking times already. But then I had that moment that was like, yeah, this is a great opportunity to lean into that random acts of inconvenience. Yes, it feels inconvenient. Nobody's going to care. I could leave it there for 2 days before anybody else came home, before I had to put it away.
Yeah.
But yeah.
thanks for sharing that, because that, I mean, how, just look at my life. I can do that tomorrow. You know, if I'm honest, and I probably will do it tomorrow, and it doesn't matter. Contrary to you, you have housemates. I am living by myself.
Yeah.
So it truly, on some level, doesn't matter. And yet, does it matter?
Yeah. Well, and that's what I ask myself, you know, if I'm doing this just because housemates, I realize no, most of the time I declutter, clean, whatever, because for me, because I like to walk into a space that looks organized and nice. And even if it feels inconvenient because I'm tired or I'm this, how can I lean into that more?
Yeah.
Just because I believe there's actually science that shows when we do things that are uncomfortable, and this is not across the board like I'm talking about abuse stuff, but when we lean into things that make us uncomfortable, we actually grow a part of our brain that makes us better at that. And so if we're too cushy all the time,
Yeah.
we're not growing that tolerance, right? And so for me, practicing random acts of inconvenience, like if I think my example that I do in a talk is instead of just buying that person a Starbucks, right? They're already in line. They can already afford it. I'm already there. That's the most convenient act of kindness, whatever. Instead, picking up a phone, calling the school to pay for a kid's lunch. This is what I decided to do. So kind of like, first of all, picking up a phone for me is to call somebody is kind of already a random act of inconvenience when I'm used to just handling everything a different way, right? So like phone, I mean, really, seriously, that's truth. So phone, look up the phone number, call the phone number because it's not in, I can't just say, hey, and tell my Siri to do it. Call, wait on hold, ask, tell the person what I want to do, find out that I have to call somebody else, wait on hold, call that person. That person's not around. Leave them a voicemail that says, their voicemail says, don't leave me a voicemail, just call me back. So then I call them back and tell them, and then they go, oh, well, they got to do this thing. I have to call them back on a Tuesday, whatever, because I got to, all of this to pay off a kid's lunch bill. I just wanted to do something to help somebody in a different way, right? It took me an hour and a half, all said and done. This project took me an hour and a half. Now, I am a person who literally my day, I mean, if you look at like I wake up at this and I breathe for 5 minutes and then I do bed yoga. I mean, literally I have my day planned out. So an hour and a half like is a big deal to be in there.
Yeah.
But if I don't practice that inconvenience, I'm not going to build the tolerance for it.
It will stay a big deal every single time.
Exactly. And then the other point of that is that do we build inconvenience into our life? So random acts of inconvenience have now caused me to create random acts of empty space in my calendar. No, I'm serious. Absolutely.
No, I fully get it, but who would think that in order to commit to that, you need to build in those flex spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I was talking to somebody and especially like a business executive. I work with people who are like, you know, making like 7 figures a month and stuff. And they're like, well, you know, when you have a team and you've got all these things in place, you're putting out fires, but your schedule is usually really busy because you're running that kind of thing. So I have my clients create open space for emergencies. And they're like, well, open space for emergencies. But the reality is you're going to need that space. Either it's going to get filled with a fire you're putting out when all of a sudden you have to get on the phone with a client or a person, or you're going to have to, it's going to get filled with something you had to move because you had an emergency. Now you got to move 4 clients, but you didn't have space for your 4 clients for a month.
Yeah. Pre-planning. And, you know, if I look at the transition we are in, what if that is something that we will have to practice a lot more. Because if we are more in true engagement with the community, we need to have that flexibility that I can say, yeah, I'll push this one over here and deal with that right now, to have that.
That's a great point, because I know that people will say to me things like, oh, I wanted to reach out to you, but I know you're really busy. And if community and relationship and things like that are important to us, building our community, being there for our community, things like that, you have to have flex space too.
Yeah.
Because, people don't usually have a crisis that fits neatly into your schedule. Just saying.
Isn't that sort of implicit in the word crisis?
Right, exactly. Except that people will literally say, oh, do you have time, next week? And I'm like, what's up? Well, I'm feeling really, I had this like sexual abuse situation and I'm feeling like I need to talk to somebody. I'm like, okay, I can talk to you today because I have flex space. And, flex space is also to care for ourselves in community. If you're always busy, everything's booked all the time, and you don't have flex space for your brain, you're not going to be emotionally healthy either.
That is true. I mean, to some extent, how I deal with that is I have appointments, fixed time slots on my calendar. But if you look at my calendar, those few fixed time slots are not representing the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I can shift, I can do this earlier or later, and put something in there because right now it is needed.
Yeah. Yeah. So a good entrepreneur does have, I finally took all my coaching clients and I basically honed them into Tuesday, 2 hours Thursday evening, and 4 hours Friday morning. And the rest of the time, I don't book appointments usually. Like today is a Monday, and we're here today. I've had 2 interviews today, which I don't usually do on Mondays. I usually just Money Monday is all about, it's Money Monday. When I wake up in the morning, other than yes, I'm alive, which I start every morning out with, I'm alive, that excitement, just like that out loud. And I do a meditation based on the day. And Monday is Money Monday. So I do an abundance meditation on Money Monday. And then I work on the, where's money? Do I need to invoice, money coming in, money going out, pay the bills, get conscious, whatever it is. And then I have time to let my brain wander and wonder about the subject of the day. Right. So that's typically what Mondays are like. But I also like to have enough time in my schedule to be inconvenienced if I need to be. My hummingbirds right now are inconveniencing me. Let me say that.
What are they doing?
Sorry. Oh, they are supposed to be only going through one feeder every 3 days.
It's spring, it's nesting time, it's egg laying time. That is energetic.
I know.
Huge energetic.
So I've mixed their food more potently for that, and they are sucking this down daily. So now, now I have to flex my time to create food to do this whole thing. So there has some random acts of inconvenience when I look out and go, and then they come to my window right here if it's getting low. And my feeder's way over there. They look in my window when it's low. They hover right in front of my face here at my window until I get up and go see that it's low. And then they're okay. So there's many random acts of inconvenience.
But we have to also admit that they figured out how to let you know and talk to you.
Talk about smart.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, hey, there it is. And it'll just hang out until I literally acknowledge it.
Yeah, and then they can relax.
Yeah, right. So I'm creating random acts of inconvenience for them because I'm not on the food fast enough. Now they have to come and spend energy getting my attention. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have let go of random acts of kindness, though. I am no longer a random acts of kindness person. I am now a practicing random acts of inconvenience person.
And the question that I have, also based of everything that you just shared, how much are random acts of kindness a spiritual satisfaction that I'm a good person, and how much do random acts of inconvenience actually grow me spiritually?
I love that because that's what in, my talk, I talk about virtue signaling, that my random acts of kindness were all about virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm.
To make myself feel like I was doing good and a good person because I'd let go of the things that were really important when I used to be inconvenienced by everything, right? Or most things. And I find that building that, first of all, to practice random acts of inconvenience, I need to be present.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm on the lookout again, since that happened, for situations that need my attention. Last year, there was a woman walking across the bridge. I'm in an area where there's, houses and apartment complexes and shops and different things. And this woman was walking across the overpass bridge. And I drove by and I just thought, there was nothing to show that there was a problem. She was walking, right? It was not raining. There was nothing bad happening. But I got past her and I just thought, oh, no. And I was gonna, it was not a convenient time.
Mm.
Just was like, I have to go back. So I pulled up beside her and I said, excuse me, are you okay? Don't mean to be weird, And she goes, oh, no. She goes, oh my gosh, no. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I've been wandering out here for 2.5 hours. I'm really lost. So I said, well, are you comfortable to get in my car so we can get off the road over there? And we'll go to that parking lot there and then we'll figure out what's going on. And she goes, oh, yes, I'm so exhausted. And so she got in the car. I took her to the parking lot. We talked about what she was trying to go, where she was trying to go. I'm like, yeah, I know where you're trying to go. And I took her home. And, she was beside herself with the fact that I would stop and help and take her home. She kept saying, just tell me in the right direction. I'm like, hey, it's another 30-minute walk. No, not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, it's always that it's an and world. Yes, it was a bummer to be quote unquote inconvenienced. More important was that not just that I felt good, but that I was helpful.
Yeah.
Feeling good is not the same as being helpful.
Actually helpful.
Right. The person that I bought the Starbucks for, yeah, they're like, oh, that was nice. And they probably just forgot about it, like whatever else.
Or in the best case scenario, they may have paid for the next one in line. Sure.
Exactly. Right. That's all great. We were all sitting there waiting. None of us were inconvenienced at that moment. But the fact that, this lady, for one, health-wise, I helped her. Humanitarian-wise, she kept saying, oh, this is so, she wasn't from here. And so she was like, oh my gosh, this is what would have happened in my hometown. But, she goes, I didn't expect it to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one thing that I keep hearing underneath what you're saying is, by being present, you are incredibly receptive to energetic cues.
Yeah, absolutely.
You read the energy of the woman.
Yeah.
And
more importantly, I felt the clench of my gut. So here's that. my gut will have a clench when something's off.
Mm-hmm. And
So
are we willing to learn that?
yeah.
What is my sign?
Right.
Because we all have probably somewhat different signs.
Yeah. Yeah. The gut is a big one for a lot of people, because what happens when you feel something off is you stop breathing.
Mm.
And that's my gut clench. My gut clenches and then my breath stops.
Ah.
And that's pretty universal, that when something feels off, because your vagus nerve actually responds to other people's vagus nerves that are not tuned.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like it's a social nerve. If you walk into a room and things feel off, it's typically because your vagus nerve is responding to something going on in the room.
In the room, yeah.
Now, I was driving 15 miles an hour past this woman that you can become that sensitive. Or I was thinking of this owl. I was driving down the road. We were going 60 and cow pasture, whatever. And I just noticed something. I realized later that the cows were in an odd configuration, but I wasn't even looking at the cows. I just felt something, stopped my partner that was driving, said, turn around. He goes, what's up? And I said, I don't know. We're going to go look. And I went up there and I was looking at the cows going, that's not normal cow lineup. And as it turns out, the cows were standing mooing at the fence because there was an owl that was injured on the other side of the fence in the grass that we couldn't see. But we went to investigate what were the cows looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Found the owl, wrapped him up, took him home, got the wildlife center, whatever. Just because the cows were standing in an awkward or yeah. So everybody's capable of seeing, knowing, because we're patterns. We're trained from a very early age to recognize patterns.
Yep.
And so those patterns are cues visually, auditorily, feeling wise, smell wise, when something's off.
And how much have we untrained ourselves?
Oh, well, like I said, I just pretty well almost let a man die.
Yeah.
So
It's
pretty hard, pretty trained to turn it off pretty hard there.
Yeah. So that is a tremendous invitation for people to actually do something in daily life. I mean, all of us respond if there is a tornado going through somewhere and people in the local area will help and there's donations going in, etc., etc. But what about daily life?
Mm.
It's not that nothing happens during daily life with others.
Lots is happening in daily life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is that? And my Humanity 1.0 to Humanity 2.0, and that would be part of Humanity 2.0, where we care and actually do something.
Yeah. Even if it's inconvenient, isn't just time. Like I am pained by suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering is, I find really painful. Like the meteor kind of painful. I don't just find it painful like, oh, that's a bummer painful. I literally feels like I don't even know, being torn apart. So if I see, suffering needless, or suffering to me is horrific, like horrifying, right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy for somebody that feels that sensitive to turn away from things that are potentially gut-wrenching, horrifying, right? So see what I'm saying? So there's one day driving down the road, you see this kind of weird thing on the side of the road, and I just am like, oh my gosh, I don't know if that animal is dead. Now, the first thing that happens to my nervous system is the idea that I'm going to go stop and this animal is not going to be dead and it's going to be mutilated and suffering.
Yeah.
Right. I can barely even talk about it right now because this is the
Mhm.
reaction. But I'm going to turn around and go check because I can't stand the fact that I wouldn't do anything if
Yeah.
that were the case, right? And inevitably, it's me that has to put an animal out of its misery. And that's horrifying and hard because it's so damaged that it's not going to live, but it's suffering, right? Nobody wants to do that. Oh, well, maybe a hunter. I remember once somebody hit a deer 2 cars ahead of us, and I started to get out to go because I'm like check and see if it was what was gonna happen, right? And a
Mhm.
guy got there before me, and I thought, oh my God, thank God it's a hunter. It's probably a hunter, right? Because he just walked right up to the deer, and I'm like, all right, he's gonna handle this. Yay for me, because deers can get hit and have internal damage, even though they're intact,
You
but be
don't see
suffering.
it, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, yay, yay. And then I noticed something off. So I walked up to him and he was sitting there with the deer's head and he was rocking back and forth going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. He wasn't equipped. Right?
Listening to what you say reminds me of a response that I gave, and I have to admit I'm not doing it constantly. But we talked about what do you want for this year? And I answered with being energetically more perceptive and allowing it in. Oh, you want to be careful with what you allow in. And I said, no, what if I allow everything in
That's what I do.
and am willing to sit with the pain? That pain, I don't have to make it mine, that I'm walking around in pain all day long now. But am I willing in this moment to perceive that pain and be present with it and then let it go?
Well, even different than letting it go, I don't, what I believe in energetic management or ethics of energy is that not being sticky. So energy will flow. Yeah, flow. Energy just moves all the time.
Yeah.
And the only time it attaches is if we're sticky. And usually we're sticky when we are
Holding on.
Yeah, holding on or stagnant. Our own energy is stagnant.
Yeah, I can see
Then that sticky, then it hits and kind of it's like being in the mud versus so to me, the more open in the flow you can be, the more energy comes in and out and just moves in like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And yeah, did that hurt? Yes, I ended up having to dispatch the deer with my dive knife, which wasn't great, but the guy stayed with me. he and the idea that highly sensitive people are always in pain means that they're only attaching to the pain. Because guess what? People are making love every day. Every day, my hummingbirds are happy, and there's dewdrops on the trees, and the sun is shining. There's as much beauty and joy and sexual energy and light and in the world too. So if you only feel the horror of the world, it's called hypervigilance, and you have trauma that's unresolved.
And right now where I live, spring is coming, and I just really cuddle under my blanket in the morning and listen to the birds singing because they are back.
Yep, exactly.
And it's such, I mean, in the summer, I still do it on and off, but in the spring, it's really, and in the late fall, it's actually hearing the geese.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's fall, the geese are back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much awesomeness going on all around. And I think there's nothing wrong with being sensitive and open and knowing that, yes, life has tragedy and life has beauty and life is multi-textured. And if you're only in one feeling, that's not about life. That's about the unresolved situations within you. And so, Yeah. Otherwise, you're a multi-dimensional experiencing, because I can feel that horror happening, and it's an and world, and this awesomeness as the sun comes up over the mountaintops, if you aren't stuck in one space, and that
Yeah.
stagnant energy is what's going to cause your biggest pain. But no, so yes, inconvenience is not fun. Suffering, tragedy, not fun. And yet beauty on the other side of that flip coin is amazement and beauty and everything else. And so I think by practicing random acts of inconvenience and getting more energetically sensitive and nuanced, you're able to, yes, experience suffering that's happening, maybe be a dispatcher of that suffering for somebody or something, and you're able to experience all the magnificence of that energy and amazement that there is in the world too.
That, yeah. And being the gift. In both cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. That was definitely food for thought, plenty of food for thought, and an invitation to look at where does that fit into my life and how much am I willing to be part of that. So I really thank you for being here, Tanja, and to inspire us that much.
Thank you. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours and anything you're doing. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the invitation.
Okay. Take care. And again, thank you so much.